Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome into another edition of the JMU Sports News Podcast. I am Bennett Conlon, joined by Jack Fitzpatrick. I'm at the beach. Jack is not at the beach, but he'll be at the beach soon, but different beach trips.
Yes, and different states, because you're at a Virginia beach, not Virginia Beach, but a Virginian beach.
Well, I'm like 20 minutes from Virginia Beach.
Okay. Yeah,
so it's basically Virginia Beach. It's like a little offshoot.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'll be at Outer Banks, the superior of the beaches.
And I just wanted to start with that so people would know where we are so they can sort of set their minds.
So if you can think of a beach house, sea urchins on the wall, really a lot of exposed wood. That's what I'm looking at with Bennett right now. Yeah. I mean, honestly, there might be a few clips of this going up because JMU Sports News Podcast is sponsored by 3-Notched, and we're really gearing up for a lot of awesome 3-Notched content. There might be some coming out of this podcast, but there'll be a lot coming up next week just to preview that and give a little tease to the stuff coming up. Next week, we'll have our 3-Notched beer or our 3-Notched brewing opponent preview, both on the podcast and on our website. So you can check that out when it drops next week, www.jmusportsnews.com. A lot of 3-Notched stuff coming there. I mean, if you're in the Harrisonburg, Richmond, Charlottesville, Roanoke area, head on into their tap room, check out what they have brewing, both as the pun there and also what they actually have brewing, because they always have fun stuff on taps, a lot of great beer. Yeah.
When you said we were gearing up for the previews, I thought you were going to say like drink a lot of beer. We're gearing up for a big football season of beer.
I mean, if you have a choice of beer to tailgate with, go with 3-Notched.
There you go.
And also, JMU Sports News is presented by Bet Online, because Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, and events with first to market odds and lines. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. I think that part of the read always has me geeking, even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50. That's promo code BLEAV50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Yeah, I got Scotty Scheffler in golf this weekend. I think he has the lead going into the Tour Championship.
Okay.
I think he holds it.
Okay, I like that pick. That's a really good pick.
He feels like someone too. He's had such a good year. He would, I want it to match up in terms of who the champion is. You're dropping everything, but who the champion is and who had the best year. And I think it should be Scotty. So I'm rooting for Scotty this weekend.
I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
What happened to Colin Morikawa when he shot a 10 on 10?
I didn't see that specific hole, but he's been a little inconsistent this summer. And then it seemed like he had gotten things figured out. He had a stretch of 6 great rounds in a row. And it's like, okay, he's back. Then he shot an 80. So who's to say?
I think he was 11 under, 2 off the pace.
He was right there. Yeah.
And then he just combusts and shoots 6 over par and just falls.
Wasn't good. It wasn't good for young Colin, but he'll be fine.
Yeah, he's good.
We were talking about a 3-Notch. We were talking about drinking beers. Yep. You don't want to drink too many beers, though, because that could influence how you treat officials and opposing players. And Jack, we got to do better as Dukes.
That is a mid-season segue. I absolutely love it. We're heading into our first topic of today. Bourne, in his Bourne Dialogues, broke down how Dukes do better. I think that's what this initiative is called. I'm calling it the dumb sportsmanship thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, I don't think, but it's also very strange.
I just feel like I feel like you have a rabid fan base. Like you have a fan base that wants to get into sports, and that's not necessarily the norm for a lot of colleges around the country. And maybe they went a step overboard with chanting F Tony Bennett. Maybe. I'm still in the camp where you had to be there to understand what happened. But I think it's just kind of weird to just be like, we haven't even played a game yet in the Sun Belt, and he's already like, you guys, the sportsmanship thing's way out of hand. We need to be better.
It's fine. Like, it's an admirable goal. There's no way to measure it other than like somebody not chanting F you, Tony Bennett. Like there's no way they can determine if it's a success. It's like a good message, right? To have like, oh, treat everybody with respect. Like I get that. That's fine. But like the idea that it's actually going to lead to anything, I think is probably a little naive.
It's like saying don't leave at halftime.
Yeah. So you got a better chance of maybe doing that. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It's like, it's just weird. It's also like, it's most college sporting events, not to like be like, well, everyone else does it, but everyone else does it.
I feel, and I also feel like we're pretty tame with our chants. Granted,
I think so.
I know I think what's sticking out in Bourne's memory and a lot of like
Yeah.
fans' memory is the FU Tony Bennett chant, which, okay. But like at football, I don't ever remember like a bad chant coming down where like, if you listen to Alabama games or like any SEC or Big Ten school, like they're chanting pretty obscene things.
This is the line I liked. I pulled up Bourne dialogue. I'm not sure when having a good time at a sporting event became defined by cursing the opponent, but there's no place for it at JMU. Since like forever.
That's exactly what
it's happened like forever, everywhere. Like, I don't know when people started cursing. It's like, I don't know if he's so far like in the suite that he can't hear what the fans are saying, but like that's not a thing.
I also just keep coming back to the FU Tony Bennett chant because like I think there's just so many layers to that a lot of people are missing. Like UVA kids make fun of JMU kids. Like it's a pretty like known rivalry between the students themselves. And then not to mention like UVA kids like always bring up the athletics thing, that they're better in basketball and football and academically. And there's the JMU just missed UVA. Like there's so many layers to it. And then on top of that, Tony Bennett is like one of the fathers of modern day college basketball. Like he's one of the coaches that you think of when you think Coach K, Jay Wright, Tony, like he's on the Mount Rushmore of today's college basketball coaches. And he was acting a fool on the sidelines against James Madison, a team they should have beaten by 20. And like, he's just acting like a child, complaining about a call that has no impact on the game. And it just like, I think it was just the culmination of everything. And they won and like JMU won the game. I don't know. I'm a defender of the FU Tony Bennett chant.
Just a heated moment. I think I mean, it's, yes, I understand that as an athletic department, you wouldn't want your students chanting that. So I think that's a fair thing to hopefully have changed or whatever. But I don't know. I just don't know how it's going to lead to anything. Like I would agree that probably not great that they chanted that. And I also don't think that the 20-year-old students or whoever, and if you're old enough, if you're an old enough student, they're selling alcohol at the games. Like they were, right. So you could have bought, a beer or 2 beers, whatever it was at a time. And you have those, you probably pregame that game as a night game. And like, so you're drunk at this game with an intense matchup and somehow JMU is like, has a legitimate chance to win. Like you're going to be kind of fired up and no one's not seeing, there's not like a little video you can play with Byington on the big screen that goes, Dukes do better, that they're going to go, you know what, let's let Tony, work the refs on the sideline and just sit there silently and go, oh, that guy, that coach. Like I don't know, like they're going to say things. I think it's a fine campaign. I just don't know that like you can actually curtail what college sports are, which is this massive business. And your goal is to get like as many people in the seats as you can, and you make more money from concessions if you're selling alcohol. So it's like you're kind of setting yourself up to have this. You can't just like run out a campaign and stop it.
I think I'd also be okay if Bourne came out and he was like, I didn't like the FU Tony Bennett chant. Like, I think we should try and be better overall. I think I'd be okay with that. I think the fact that it's a campaign that they've dubbed Dukes do better and how he's like, this is an unacceptable way. Like, do you know what happens on JMU's campus on a day-to-day basis? Like, this is nothing compared to the things you hear and see and what happens at party. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's really out of touch.
It doesn't seem like the biggest issue.
Yeah.
I would, I would say. I get what he's saying. I also kind of agree that it might have made a little more sense if instead of like the weird Dukes do better phrase, he just had a statement maybe after the game.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, in December. Instead of August being like, hey, like that's a little much, like great win, but like don't do that. And be like, all right, yeah, we hear that. I think that kind of thing would be nice. And then you could have Byington say something too if you wanted. I mean, he might have, I can't remember, but kind of strange, I think, to run out this whole campaign right before the season when you're holding clearly still upset from something that happened in December. It's like you kind of gotta say something there, right? You got to treat us like children, I think, in the stands, where it's like you can't punish someone. It's like a dog, right? You can't punish them 4 hours later for something they did. They don't know what it was. They don't remember that.
Yeah, exactly. We're on to football season. What happened? That was a whole non-conference slate ago. That was before JMU's season went down the toilet. That was when they still had an at-large hope.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I guess I like the idea generally, right? It'd be cool. It's a good ideal that JMU fans and all college sports fans would be more supportive and nice to each other. I still think there are some that are like reasonably nice. I don't think there were UVA fans who were getting like singled out in a derogatory way during the game. I remember one fan, she showed up with like her JMU boyfriend, I think. And they gave her like a friendly jeer and she like they booed her as she walked into the section, but it was like all fun and people were like laughing about it after, including her. So I think like some of that stuff that Bourne doesn't see is like fine sportsmanship and you're still ragging on someone. It was the one chant, which I guess you could hear it pretty clearly and maybe
on a nationally televised. I think this, if that was also on Flow, I don't think Bourne does a Dukes do better campaign. I think the fact it's a nationally televised game.
Yeah, it doesn't help. But maybe I think some of it too is like JMU fans or students, like the student section, especially for basketball, has a long way to like go in terms of coming up with chants or anything. I think that was just literally like a heat of the moment and they had nothing better to say because they haven't gone to many basketball games. It's just like, fuck, don't even it.
What do we say now? What do Team Storm? What do the Cameron Crazies say?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know that it's going to do anything.
Yeah.
It's like he had some other line in here. We live in a challenging world where animosity and confrontation towards another person or group is far too frequent. It is a conscientious choice to not fall into that trap in a competitive sporting environment and to choose to be vocal and energetic while doing so in a manner that builds up rather than tearing down.
I'm not going to build up the opponent. I'm sorry. I'm not going to say,
Tony,
rip into the refs, rip into the refs.
I think maybe he means like you chant like positively toward JMU as opposed to against an opponent. But again, that's not like a new thing. That's something that's been happening in college sports probably forever. Certainly since I was a kid and started going to college sporting events, I've never gone to a sporting event and been like, wow, you know who is really polite? That student section. Like, so I think it's a bigger problem. And I don't think this saying that the students should do better is actually going to make an impact. But that's just my opinion on the campaign and my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I like that breakdown. Dumb sportsmanship thing. Moving from all of that off the field stuff, I think it's time we jump into a little bit of on the field things, some updates from camp, expectations. Next week, we'll be doing a deeper dive into Middle Tennessee. The week before, we might try and get on a Middle Tennessee beat writer. We'll see how that plays out. I don't know if Middle Tennessee has a beat writer, but that was rude. They probably won't come on now that I just trashed them. First things first, some updates from camp. I don't know if you've heard, Bennett, but the defense has been hit pretty hard by COVID.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised, honestly, that there have been like some COVID articles. And I saw some people where they're like, why are they testing? It's like, they're not testing everyone. I think a kid is like, hey, coach, I feel very ill.
Yeah.
And then they test him and they're like, all right, shit, you got to do the protocol. It's not like they're going out and like Centeo feels healthy or somebody feels healthy and they're jamming a swab up his nose. Like, I think they're following standard procedure across the country, which is if you feel sick, you can test yourself. So they're not going out of their way to test. I don't believe.
No, they're not.
Because they weren't even right. They didn't do this all season in 2020 because of that. So now, not in the height of it, they're certainly not going to go out of their way to spend that much on tests. Anyway, Yeah, it's interesting. So I guess the defense has seen it a little more than the offense. Is that what you read?
That's what I've heard and read, that the defense got hit a little bit harder. And by that, I think it's primarily really hit the defense. They've lost a lot of players. They've been struggling with depth on that side. They haven't had a lot of continuity, practice to practice, week to week. So that leads me to my next topic of, I don't think this defense is going to be good.
Because of the COVID?
No, because I think just like everything piling on it. I think they're thin at linebacker, cornerbacks. There's one start between them, or between the corners and linebackers. There's one start combined. And then not only that, the continuity of the team, they haven't really been able to play together as a full unit for the last few weeks because of COVID. I think everything piling on each other is just compounding into where I don't think this defense is going to be able to hold opponents under 30 points.
I think they're going to be fine. Maybe I'm just too optimistic this year, but they've got like, I don't know, assuming they can get some guys back, because it's a lot faster now than it used to be in terms of like turnaround, right? You get your symptoms, you get over the symptoms, and then you're good to go. And if you're a close contact, you don't even have to quarantine. So obviously a little probably easier to catch it if you're a close contact on a football team and you're spending all your time with each other and you're like in close proximity. But if you can get some guys and they all get healthy, that's good. I think they've got enough depth on some positions. Like I like the defensive line. I think safety, they're fine. Corner, they have some questions. Sure. I like the young linebackers. So I think it'll be sort of an interesting development through the season. But playing Middle Tennessee, Norfolk State, and then a bye week, I feel like that's enough of a buffer that if you can get through the week 1 game, you should have everybody pretty healthy in terms of things like that. And you can also build that chemistry, maybe not in the middle of camp, but in early season. So I guess that would be my cautiously optimistic view of the depth problems.
That's valid. I'm still just nervous. I'm looking at the odds for week 1 against Middle Tennessee, because last time we recorded, there were 7.5-point favorites.
Yeah, they're right around a touchdown from what I've seen.
6.5-point favorites. So they've come down.
Going down a little, yeah.
I think Middle Tennessee might pose a little bit of an issue. But you're right. You have Middle Tennessee, Norfolk bye. So essentially you have another, including next week, you have another month before you're actually playing like
Appalachian State. Yeah.
Yeah. Until
I think it's actually a month from today when we record. Yeah.
So like until you're in Sun Belt play and games matter more, or I guess no game really matters this season, but like, I see your point. I know we talked about it last podcast and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but it's just going to be different when you're playing against Chase Bryce, who can hit a wide open receiver 50 yards down the field, which this secondary has allowed on a few times, and just Davis Cheek or, the undercuffler wasn't able to hit an open receiver 50 yards down the field. Like they're going to be playing quarterbacks that can do that. So that worries me. And I think I just go back and forth where I'm like, maybe we're too confident going into this season. Maybe 3 wins is what's going to happen. Like
3 feels low to me.
It does feel low, but I think I did this to myself when I put out the tweet, what's your boldest prediction for the JMU football season? And I know it was all bold predictions, and it's things that people don't necessarily think will happen, and it's bold. But a lot of people seemed really confident that like this team's going to overperform expectations. And I think it's more likely they underperform this season.
I think it depends which expectations. If it's like finishing 6th, like the coaches predicted in the East, I think they could overperform that. If it's like going above the 6.5 win total, I don't know that that's realistic, but it's hard because there have been so many different people with different expectations. I feel like most years it's pretty clear with JMU. It's like, oh, they're a top 3 team in the FCS or whatever. But this year it's a little harder because it's like, oh, like the odds makers have their over under at 6.5 wins. But a lot of Sunbelt I've seen them picked last in the Sunbelt East. So like I think
them go 1-11.
They're going 1-11. Yeah, Arkansas State's 24/7 page has them going 1-11. That's what they said. FPI had them going 1-11, which is just a incredibly impressive way to not understand math, but that's okay. I think FPI has them an underdog in 10 of the 11 games, but it projects them to win 3.6 games, right? Because if you have like a 47% chance of winning, you're an underdog. But if you go throughout a whole season with a 40% chance of winning every game, your projection is not going to be only winning one of the toss-up games.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people are confused by that when they look at FPI. Anyway,
thank you for breaking down FBI.
they also have a tab that does it for you, so you don't have to do any
Okay.
math, and it just says projected wins. But they must have missed that one and given JMU a 12th game, which I thought was bold. But good for them, I suppose. But I don't know. I think they could outperform finishing last in the division because you can't underperform it.
I mean, yeah, that's valid. Maybe I'm just thinking like what JMU fans' expectations are, where it's like finishing behind Coastal, App State, Marshall, JMU, or like
I think they could finish 5th.
I don't know, man.
Like I would say App State, Coastal, Marshall, and Georgia State are better than them, would be my initial read.
Do you want to know something insane?
Yeah.
So JMU's a 6.5-point favorite against Middle Tennessee, meaning that odds makers think they'll win by 7 points or more. According to ESPN's Football Power Index, Middle Tennessee has a 70.4% chance of winning.
That's the that's FPI?
That's FPI.
That I feel like it's got JMU way lower just because they're an FCS team and it hasn't accurately assessed them.
That could be it. I
think the
past
FPI
it.
ranking for them is stupid low.
Okay, that was a perfect segue then into the SP Plus ranking.
Also, I think low.
Do you think that's low? They check in at 94. That's Bill Conley's SP Plus ranking. 94th. I believe that's around the lower third of the Sun Belt, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I'm going to double check while you talk about it. Why do you think that is low? Do you think they're just using FCS stats and it's not just fully up to date, and JMU will kind of jump up a few spots after when we're looking at this come their bye week in 3 weeks?
Yeah, I think it just doesn't totally reflect how good the team is. I think it's a little bit based on information, from the FCS, which is obviously the information you have, but everyone else sort of gets, I feel like, better metrics just for having played an FBS schedule. And I don't think that's entirely fair. I'm trying to see where JMU is in the Sagarin ratings. They're 103rd. So I guess maybe they are pretty darn low on some of these rankings. I just think that's low. I think Centeio is going to be good, better than he's been at any point in his college career. I think the offense is going to be fine. I think the defense has enough points
I think Todd Centeio will outperform any expectation because
I think he's he doesn't have like incredible previous stats. Like last year is his main year and he had 15 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. But I think in a system that gets the best out of quarterbacks, he's going to play well.
Yeah.
And the schedule is not that daunting, I don't think. I mean, it's certainly challenging, but from a defensive standpoint, there's some weeks where he should be able to have really good performances. I don't know, like some of the ratings don't make any sense. Like you look at the Sager in 2022, they have Montana at 90 and JMU at 103. Like, how does that make sense? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. They have like a bunch of MAC teams ahead of JMU. I also think the Sun Belt in general is kind of too low in FPI and SP Plus.
So you're a little higher on the Sun Belt than the rest of the analytics communities are.
Yeah, and I think they'll adjust. Like, I don't think FPI has any Sun Belt team in the top 50, which is it's stupid. Like, that's not going to be how the season ends. Like, at least one of the teams is going to be a top 50 college football team.
Yeah, I think at one point there will be a ranked Sun Belt team.
Yeah,
is that a hot take?
I could see that happening. It's typically the preseason polls hate the group of 5, and then the season ends, and there's a few group of 5 teams that are in there.
Yeah. Just so everyone's aware, when it comes to the SP Plus, JMU checks in at 94. Some notable names around them is ODU at 93, Colorado State at 96, Middle Tennessee down at 100, and Troy at 91.
Like they're better than Troy.
According to this, they're not.
I think they're better than Troy.
Georgia State at 76. Arkansas State 121, Texas State 122.
Aren't those the two?
Yeah.
Those are the two West teams that JMU play. You know what I mean? Like there's some, like when people are like, oh, I could see them winning 6 games. That's part of why is they get 2 crappy West teams. They have an FCS game and they open the year against Middle Tennessee. Like you're looking like they could have 4 wins by early October.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it just based off of SP plus, they should win Middle Tennessee based off SP plus. They'll beat Texas State, they'll beat Arkansas State, and they'll beat Norfolk State. So yeah, 4 wins in their first 5
games. Yeah, and then they might not win again, according to some people. So
me and whoever coach is on Twitter.
That was his. I like the bold predictions that aren't positive, though. That kind of makes for a more fun thread.
It is, because everyone else was like, I think they're going to beat either App State or Louisville. And it's like, that's really bold because both of those are on the road in very hostile environments. And Louisville has a quarterback that might go second as the second quarterback or the third quarterback in next year's draft in Malik Cunningham. And you think we can beat him. Love the confidence.
It's a bold take. Because last time JMU played an NFL quarterback, it was Mitch Trubisky. Not the best quarterback, as we've seen. He is now on his 3rd NFL team with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he shredded our defense. That he did. All right, sticking with quarterbacks, I want to ask you, Todd Centeio, Billy Atkins, the battle that's still raging on. Are you surprised that that's still a storyline?
So I know what Kurt Cignetti's doing. Like, he's not going to announce it until probably next week's media availability and or the O'Neill's press conference. Like, I think that's when it's going to come out. And I'm not trying to rag on the local media. Dave Riggert, TJ Eck, and Noah all do a fantastic job, and they're just doing what they have to do. They have to ask the questions because there is no quarterback announced. But I just think it's stupid. We're still running with this storyline. Like, we know it's Todd Centeio. Kurt Cignetti has been dropping breadcrumb hints this whole time. He doesn't really talk about anything else. He has said on record, it is the least of his concerns is the quarterback position. Like, he's said that Todd Centeio looks every part of a 6-year senior. He's played so many years. He's been in the Mountain West. He's been at Temple. Like, there's no reason we need to keep like playing this hypothetical of what if it's Alonzo Barnett? What if it's Billy Atkins? It's not. Like, it's just not going to be.
Probably not the least of someone's concerns if they're undecided about the starter.
Especially like a starting quarterback. If I'm Kurt Cignetti, I'm going to be like, I'm worried who we're going to start. Even if like they're all 3 good ones. Like, what's the John Madden quote? If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. Like, right. If I was Kurt Cignetti and I didn't know who was a starter, I think that'd be the top of my concern list. It's going to be Todd Centeio. There's a reason they brought him in. There's a reason Centeio probably transferred here. He has 1 year of eligibility left. He's not going to a program that's not going to give him a really strong shot at being the starter. I mean, Barnett, Atkins, the future of this program's in good hands from what it sounds like. But I just think right now, the fact that we still are giving them the time of day. I think the question is, who's the backup?
I think it's going to be Atkins. It sounds like it's kind of been that 1, 2, 3 with Barnett at 3. So I don't know. That's a weird one that's still happening, but I think we'll get the 2 deep probably on Monday or whatever, which I think will also coincide with some sort of press conference where we learn that Centeio is the starter. So yeah, I think we'll learn pretty soon, finally, what's going on there, which I think will be fairly interesting. I'm excited for that. And yeah, we'll finally get some positive vibes.
Some much needed closure on that. I think Centeio steps in, and that was my bold prediction last week on the podcast that he wins Sunbelt Player of the Year. Which
I thought you were going to say the starting job. I was like, yeah, that was bold. They had a couple recruiting things we should get to.
Yes,
they've added a couple of like high quality recruits, and they also added Florida's Andrew Burkett as the director of player personnel. So he worked at Arizona State and Louisiana with Billy Napier, and he was the director of recruiting research with the Gators. Obviously, Napier hasn't coached a game yet with the Gators, so he did not spend a ton of time in Gainesville. But he's an interesting one, and he spent some time at Alabama as an assistant. So I think he's a good one. I believe he, I'm assuming the Alabama connection is part of maybe why he was on his radar, but on Cignetti's radar.
Yeah.
But it seems like a good hire. All the Florida people seem kind of bummed that he was leaving. So it's also good that they're adding a position, the director of player personnel, that has some, recruiting value. I know Cignetti had talked a lot about wanting to bolster his recruiting department, and it sounds like he got a pretty good hire.
Yeah, and then they got a commitment out of Jarvis Green, who had a few other solid mid-major group of 5 people courting him, and he chose JMU. So with that new hire of the director of player personnel, plus a Jarvis Green commitment, do you think that's kind of a sign of things to come, that JMU is going to be really recruiting heavily with those group of 5 power? Well, I mean,
some of them, I have Appalachian State, like Memphis. I think you could call them. That's fair.
I guess in my mind it was Charlotte, and I was like, well, Charlotte's not really power. I don't really want to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Sorry, Don.
Sorry, Don.
No, I think it will be kind of a sign of things to come. I think they'll be good recruiting wise. They kind of have been in the past at the FCS level, and I think moving in now. The one thing I'll say is I think the ratings, like recruiting ratings for group of 5, I think are like pretty inaccurate.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to keep in mind, is like they're probably going to add players that are really good that you might see as like a 2-star or 3-star on some website. And I wouldn't read too much into that. I think that'll get better as they start getting some of these better players, but a lot of it is I just feel like the ratings suck.
And also we saw it with the FCS, like a 3-star would commit, and then all of a sudden they drop to like a 2-star or like a 1-star. Right. And you're just like, wait, he was just a 3-star 2 weeks ago. So you'll probably see a lot of that too.
A lot of the system is like the rating changes based on who's offered, not necessarily them scouting someone. So it's like if Alabama offers, it's like, oh, well, he must be a 4 or a 5-star because he's Alabama offered, which is like true. So it's not the dumbest thing, but at the same time, someone will like commit to, like Wake Forest, and people are like, the system's like, well, he sucks. It's like, no, it's not how it works. So,
well, he can't be better than a 3-star if he's going to Wake Forest.
Something to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah. So that's really exciting. Anything you want to finish this podcast out on?
Not too much. Next week will be our megapod where we're talking Middle Tennessee, a bunch of season preview stuff. So that should be a longer one, I would think.
Yep.
And it sounds like you might have a giant Jenga battle coming soon.
Yeah, I have a giant Jenga battle coming soon. Although he's afraid to play me in cornhole.
That's interesting. Yeah. So when he talked about people being really good or really bad at cornhole, is he on the really bad side?
That's what I have to assume. If you can't hate cornhole and be good at it.
Right. True.
I'm trying to find Bill Papp at bottom_9. Look, I don't know which game I'm going to be making it to. This is to you, Bill. I don't know what game it'll be. Have a couple dates potentially circled. Me and Bennett trying to work it out, but whatever game I end up at this season, I'd like to play you in giant Jenga, and then I'd like to run you off the court in cornhole while drinking a 3-notch beer.
You play on a court in cornhole?
We will for this. We'll go to the tennis courts. We'll go to the hillside courts.
I like that. That's really intense.
But no, I mean, I'm just not a fan of giant Jenga.
Definitely a tough tailgating game, but
that's all. I think cornhole's the best tailgating game. The beanbags don't get blown in the wind if it's a windy day. Giant Jenga's just too loud, too cumbersome. I'd rather have Giant Connect 4.
Yeah, because it's not spilling all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess when you let it out of the bottom.
Yeah. I don't know. All right. Anything else you got to add?
I think that's it.
No, excited for next week. I'm putting together spreadsheets for each team. I'm putting together one for Middle Tennessee as we speak. James Madison's is put together, but it's really hard to put together a spreadsheet when there's no like advanced analytics or like any real stats. True. Like for Middle Tennessee, at least there's stuff like their against the spread record is easily available. Yeah. Their SP rankings from last season are available. Where JMU, it's all like starting right now, and you're just like, well, the eye test tells me something that all of these advanced analytics don't understand, but we'll get that together. So we'll have that throughout the season. But yeah, the JMU Sports News Podcast is presented by 3-Notch Brewing and Bet Online. We'll talk to you guys next week. Have a wonderful rest of your day. For Bennett Conlon, my name's Jack Fitzpatrick.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.